everyone, and welcome back to Let's Take 5, the podcast where we pick a cinema legend and take 5 of their film to recognize their brilliance and range and excellence. I added adjective this time because I don't say brilliant enough in this podcast. Yeah, my name is Austin Luger.
My name is Ray Martindale.
And we are here for our second entry into our Werner Herzog 5. Last week we reviewed Aguirre, Wrath of God. This week we're going to be reviewing Nosferatu the Vampyre. And coming up we're going to have Fitzcarraldo, Grizzly Man, and Encounters at the End of the World. But this is actually fitting. We nailed it. This is our Halloween episode. Yeah. This comes out the Friday before Halloween, and we are reviewing Nosferatu the Vampyre.
Yeah, it's a good movie. I got to ask you a question, though, Austin.
Sure.
How come when you say Aguirre, you don't say the Wrath of God, and you say Wrath of God?
Honestly, this is the dumbest answer. It's because I keep thinking of the Fassbinder film Ali, Fear Eats a Soul, and they're structured similarly.
I knew there had to be a reason, because I know you know the title.
Yes, so it's a very dumb thing in that I mix up which one of those has the word "the" in it, I guess.
That's funny. Yeah, I know. I figured I would let you explain yourself.
I'm glad that's
nice
like
that. Yeah. Nosferatu the Vampire. It's been a long time since I've seen the film. Mm-hmm. I have seen the silent film more. And more recently, I saw this film before the original. I think it was in 1922.
Yes,
it's a German expressionist horror film. Mm-hmm. It's a fantastic movie.
It's amazing.
It's maybe arguably the best or one of the best silent films ever made. Certainly, it gave rise to the most famous horror villain ever, and Dracula. Because
it beat the Dracula movie that we kind of know from Hollywood by a couple years.
Yeah, it did.
Several years, actually.
Yeah. It was. I mean, we're going that far back that it beats it by several years.
It's called Nosferatu because they didn't have the actual right to the Bram Stoker novel, so they just made a very similar thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Back when Bram Stoker still had rights to his novel.
Yeah.
I assume he doesn't anymore. Maybe the estate does.
The estate does.
Okay. I didn't know how books work in that regard. I don't know if they didn't know when they enter a public domain or whatever. Because Nosferatu, I believe, is public domain now. The film is.
Yes.
But anyway, regardless, so I got to see this film again here recently, and it was good. I mean, it was creepy. Kinski as the vampire, as actually Count Dracula instead of Orlok, which is what he is in the silent film. Mm-hmm. Fantastic. Again, no shots wasted in this film, which is Werner Herzog sort of classic. I did feel ultimately that the film sort of lost steam somewhere around the halfway point when it became more when the themes, the larger the themes got. The more the film sort of collapsed on their weight and stopped being a movie about a vampire.
I understand that,
and that lost something for me. There was something like the ring around the rosy scene later in the film is haunting and scary and weird, and the plague being there is awful. Like it's freaky. It's done creatively weird, and when something seems happy and everyone seems jolly when something so awful is happening, that's always horrifying. Everyone's got the plague, and they're having fun because they know they're going to die, so they're going to sit down to one last feast.
Yeah.
Ain't that grand? That's really creepy. But again, nothing was as creepy as Dracula, and they just don't really want to. The second half doesn't really emphasize that, I feel like, the way it should.
Well, it's interesting because, this is not my... Obviously, I like the silent film more. Mm-hmm. The reason I wanted this to be on the list is just to kind of really show Herzog in a genre. Mm-hmm. Because he's done strange comedies, like Bad Lieutenant Protocol New Orleans, which can only be described as a comedy, and other kind of strange movies. But for him to go into the horror territory, I felt that his themes actually fit in pretty well, because to use Dracula as a metaphor for a plague on society was really interesting, because too often, aside from that silent film, we really think of Dracula as a very charming manipulator.
Yeah, sure.
He's someone who is donning the cape, speaks very eloquently, he is all-powerful,
usually
all evil.
Handsome.
Yeah, handsome. Yeah. And that is so much of what vampirism is seen as. I mean, before Twilight, there was the Interview with the Vampire series that made the idea of immortality a very emo, but a very attractive emo.
And look who was playing the vampires.
Yeah, Tom Cruise.
And Brad Pitt.
Yeah. So. To have Klaus Kinski and to put him in this makeup and make him look like a monster is not the right word because Dracula is one of the universal monsters. Just a disgusting, barely held together, gross figure. Mm-hmm. He's scary.
He's scary looking.
He's a scary
really
dude.
Scary looking. Yeah.
And he's just more animalistic than man.
But he looks like he could still be a man.
Yeah.
Which I think is important. It's something they were going for. Because he's just an extremely ugly and scary looking man.
Yeah.
I mean, right? I mean, that's the intent.
I mean, to have the fangs being in the front of his teeth, basically mm-hmm. his buck teeth are fangs, mm-hmm. is just so unpleasant.
Yeah. It's hard to look at. It's weird.
And the man part really comes into play when you see the sorrow of his own existence. Kinski is playing him like it's not a martyr because he's not stopping what he's doing. He's just like, this is what he has to do to live, is to keep doing this.
Yeah, well, and also to be unloved. That's like
sure
that ends up being a theme later when I think the movie's ultimately less interesting.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like the movie had an incredibly solid first hour, and there's some things I want to talk about. The build-up to going cross-country and sort of having that journey to Dracula's castle was mm-hmm. fantastic. Like, the the way the gypsies react to seeing, that's not a slur, they're called gypsies in the film, the way they react to him talking about crossing the Carpathian Mountains and going to, Dracula, because he's going to buy a house in town, he's going to deliver the deed.
Yeah.
And then arriving at the castle, which was, it looks like it's a total ruin. Mm-hmm. And then my favorite moment is the meeting with Dracula and the dinner with Dracula. And when he cuts his hand on the bread, not Dracula, the guy,
Jonathan.
Yeah, Jonathan. And Dracula has to suck the blood because he can't avoid it. And then they just stare at each other for like a minute. Dracula's just standing in the corner, and Jonathan's just staring at him. And then he just knocks the chair out of the way and takes a step forward, and the camera just starts coming back with him. And he's so imposing and so frightening and so scary that even if Jonathan, as a bigger man, could probably overpower him, but never could because he's too horrifying, and he's like just a primal force that's sort of moving towards him, and that's lost in the second half of the movie. It doesn't. It's just goofy watching him carry coffins around the graveyard. It's just like goofy to me.
Because to me, once he
gets too mischievous and less scary. He's more like Eeyore than like.
Well, because I think
Dracula.
He's out of his element, you get to see more of the pathetic quality of him, which is something that no other Dracula tale allows it to do.
And that's fair.
Yeah.
It's definitely there.
Him holding his own coffin is so comical looking.
Yeah, it's
I do laugh, and I think you're supposed to laugh. That's what he's going for, because this is Count Dracula. But he's not a count.
Yeah.
He has to carry his own shit. and his big romantic coffin, he has to literally be in dirt. Like, mm-hmm. It's not... There's nothing cool about what he's doing. And obviously we do spoilers in the show. His downfall is about him actually feeling good about himself for like once in his life, and then dies.
Yeah.
Because the way they describe how sunlight will kill a vampire... They describe it more of if he is so enamored with love that he doesn't hear the cock crow. Mm-hmm. Is something like that. And for once in the
Jonathan's wife, because she's the hero of the film.
Jonathan sucks in every incarnation.
No, Jonathan's adult. He's just like a really goofy guy. He's like Ichabod Crane. Yeah. And so she kind of takes charge in the second half of the film. I mean, Van Helsing's in the film, and he's
worthless.
He's a worthless piece of shit. So like she has to kind of like take charge, and she sacrifices herself,
and like very like knowingly.
Yeah.
And their interactions together, I think, are still
because
really
he's brought the plague. He's killing everybody.
Everybody.
I mean, everyone's dying.
And this is a Herzog film. There are rats everywhere.
Yeah, there are so many freaking rats.
If you have a problem with rats,
I'm not scared of rats, but like that would be uncomfortable for me on that set. There's like,
oh my God.
There's thousands and thousands of rats. They all look the same.
Yeah,
like a rat is cute. Rats, like it's like whoa, okay,
nasty.
It's getting weird.
And
they all got the plague.
The plague. He's literally bringing the plague upon them, and it's really amusing to me. This is, I think, a funny film at time. Herzog's very strange, dark humor. I love the part at the end when they're discussing who should be arrested for murdering Dracula.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. There's two really goofy moments in this film to me. That was one because, there's this joke about there's no one left alive to arrest.
You're under arrest. Well, there's no police.
They're all dead.
Yeah, they're all dead. But you should go in the jail. The jailers are all dead.
Yeah. It's just like this weird, funny moment. I'm like, okay. It's like the end of the movie. I mean, we're talking literally like
the last
2 pages of the script.
Yeah.
So that's funny. And another one that cracks me up is the shot. There's like this wide of Dracula just running down the street.
Yeah.
It's just like, there's Dracula.
Yeah, I know.
He's just running around.
It's Claude Kinski.
Yeah. And it's, I see where it could be effective in some ways. As a horror film, it's not. That is not. But
he takes it scene by scene, really.
Exactly. It is scene by scene because one of the great, because you can't have a Herzog film without some unbelievably technical achievement. It was so incredible. I didn't realize what had actually happened in the scene until after I thought about it, after it moved on to another scene. So there's a scene where Jonathan's wife is combing her hair in the mirror, and you see Dracula's shadow on the wall behind her with the door open. And then...
Doesn't the door creep open?
Yeah, it creeps open.
Then the shadow appears?
The creep opens, but you don't see Dracula, and the shadow appears. And then you're like, okay, so he's out in the hallway. And then the door shuts, and you still see the shadow. And it's getting bigger, and then all of a sudden his hand enters the frame behind her, and you realize afterwards, oh yeah, you were viewing this through a reflection.
Yeah.
He was standing there. His reflection isn't seen. And it's all done in one shot, and it's all really genius how it sort of works, just to borrow a line from you. Like, that was amazing.
He plays the mythology really well, because sometimes when people do vampire metaphors, they kind of just ignore all that and focus on the metaphor. But to use, you get to see Herzog really play with enjoying the genre. That scene where it's Jonathan in bed, right? Where he's just kind of approaching him very quietly and slowly towards the bed in like a very iconic shot.
Yeah.
That's amazing. That's so cool and creepy.
But see, later in the film, it ends up sometimes becoming an issue to me because I go, why is he moving his fingers like that? Just to be weird? Whereas, earlier in the film, it was menacing and it had purpose in the scene with her in the mirror. Later, it's like...
He's just uncomfortable with his own skin.
Okay, but that seems...
Because his nails are so much longer, and again, it's more like weak talons than fingers.
No, it is. I mean, and it seems nitpicky to point this stuff out, but... I guess
he's playing in a genre.
I just didn't know. Yeah, it's a genre. A lot of times I just didn't know how to feel about the film. I watched Nosferatu, the 1922 film, and that's a scary movie.
It is so creepy.
Yeah, it's a really creepy, and part of why probably because it's a 1922 silent film, which sort of adds to that.
Yeah.
And this, there were a lot of times where I didn't know how to feel about it, even though I always knew I was watching something that was crafted really well. Mm-hmm. Put together well. I know that Herzog didn't waste a shot in this film. Right. I know that. I'm confident in that. I'm confident in Herzog, and I'm also... The shots are always so brilliant. I just don't always how to feel about them.
I think, to me, the use of Dracula as a plague on society was kind of a way of doing two things with him. One, to make him a monster that is fearful, and two, just kind of recognizing the forces that can kill us on a mass thing. To recall the Black Death, and to recognize how people just died, how society is just crippling. And to make that a force of nature, this is now our weekly Herzog in nature moment, of just to kind of recognize that it's really hard to stop something like that, and the cost can be devastating. Because he really does feel he's more nature than man.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Do those films work in a Dracula film?
Those elements?
I said those films. Do those tenets of... those existential tenets, a lot of stuff we talked about in Aguirre was talking about, man coping with the insignificance of self.
Right.
And, you could be anything you want. You could be star NBA player. You could be a bum on the side of the street. The Black Plague will kill you.
Yeah.
And that's that. And your story's over. So that's here under the context of a remake of a 1922 silent film that's about a vampire.
I think it does work because when you have those unkillable killing machines out there, the Freddy Krueger in his sixth film, Michael Myers in whatever film, the deaths become very unattached. But to have someone who's not even depicted as that smart cause this much havoc just by existing made me feel unnerved by it. Just because this is just what he does. And he knows it, and he doesn't stop because it's, in his mind, his right to try to exist as well. Just as someone else's.
And I think that point is made, and it's interesting, and I think that it's just all the pieces are there, and it worked for me, most of the time. It's still one of the best Dracula movies ever made.
Yeah, because it just stands out. It's so rare for me to see especially a Dracula film, have such a different take on it, and that's what really worked for me. But I want to hear you talk some more about Klaus Kinski, because I feel this guy's gonna leave a mark on you as an actor. You're gonna keep watching.
Yeah, I gotta get the big elephant out of the room just to acknowledge that. I typically have trouble separating personal life from actors in general. Yeah, so I'm gonna get that out of the way. Is Kinski in general wasn't a very, by all accounts, I was not going to say not a very good person, because who am I to judge, but he was certainly a very erratic person, had a very erratic
extremely
behavior.
Difficult person
to be around.
There's a whole documentary about Herzog and his relationship called My Best Fiend, which is just filled to the brim. This is after Kinski had died. It's just...
He was married 3 times, like a year apiece. He apparently literally said, women to him are, discardable pleasures.
You get to see the sink that he ripped out of Herzog's wall when they were in a fight.
Okay. You had 3. So you had 3, and he had children with 3 different women. Not to say anything wrong with that, but he had 2 of them were daughters. He had 1 son, which was the only child of his that attended his funeral when he died. So the 2 daughters have both. One accused him of raping her from like age 5 to 19, and then the other one said that he had tried a few times but was unable to. So she believes, the other girl. I don't know if they really have a relationship, but so this is a guy with a lot of demons. So it's usually hard for me to separate that from. But I came into this 5 not having known that.
And I honestly didn't know that. I'm embarrassed I didn't know that until before recording, which I'm going to now learn more about.
Yeah, so it's out there. But, like with Woody Allen, it's like... the talent speaks for itself here. He's an incredible actor.
He is.
He really, really is. And he had something going on. Like I said, in the Aguirre... That movie can't exist without him. Like this is similar stuff here. Max Schreck's performance in Nosferatu in the original is incredible too.
Absolutely.
This is iconic as well.
The guy and everything about him is just an insanely upsetting person, and these stories are absolutely horrible to hear, and It is strange to talk about him within these contexts and such, especially in what we're literally describing him playing a monster.
Yeah. And also a monster that has fantasies about the main heroine in this film. There's a lot of. I was the whole time where he's basically. He has a scene where he's basically molesting her. She's letting it happen because she has to save the day.
The sun to come up.
At the end of the film. And that's the type of actor, and you do think about this like in the theater or whatever. So much of those relationships are built on trust, and part of me was going the whole time. That takes me out of the world a little bit, because I'm not seeing him as Nosferatu in this moment. I'm seeing him as Kinski, and I'm wondering how much is he probably enjoying this. which isn't good. And maybe not at all. Maybe not at all. I don't know.
But it's there.
But it's there, and I can't help but, think that way. So
something I did think about during that scene was kind of how Herzog filmed it. It was such an incredibly static shot, and it was just so... It was so not titillating.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because so many films nowadays would mess that up.
Yeah, particularly when you consider her, because she's absolutely gorgeous.
Gorgeous woman. Yeah. And a really good actor.
Yeah.
She commands the scene immediately.
Yeah, Jonathan has a real problem. She doesn't.
Jonathan is a doof from the very beginning, and when she's saying, I feel there's a great evil coming, I would go, I think I got to cancel my trip here, because she's speaking very convincingly. I think the guy who played Jonathan knew how much of a doof he was. His
ADR is really weird too. It only adds to how goofy he is.
I recently rewatched with your brother the original Friday the 13th film, and that one also kind of does the horror thing of where, as they go to the destination, every single person on the planet tells them not to go, especially people who are there. In this one, it just became funny of how Jonathan had all the red flags that he could possibly have.
Yeah, he really wanted to deliver that deed.
Yeah.
No, it is set up in the very beginning of the film that he'll make a ton of money on this. So at the end of the film, her sacrifice is in vain because Jonathan turns into the next Dracula, the next vampire, and he's gonna take over this town, and this town's gonna turn into where Dracula was.
Nature wins.
And nature wins. But it seemed like... I mean, you know me. I'm all for pessimistic endings. I am. I typically enjoy them.
This was too cynical?
Yeah, it just seemed really kind of... It didn't feel earned. It's it didn't earn the cynicism. Sure, maybe if there's going to be... Because it almost sets up a sequel. Yeah. It actually kind of does, because Van Helsing's in the film.
Yeah.
And he's not arrested. He knows vampires exist now. He's the one that drives the stake through Dracula's heart. So he's going to now, fight Jonathan, right? It kind of set up that way, and it just... I don't know, yeah, the ending just kind of... It didn't earn the cynicism to me, because it built up her sacrifice so much that to rob it of... that robbed that scene of its majesty. It didn't feel like it was done eloquently enough.
I guess
you get bit by a vampire, you become a vampire. Well, duh. Okay.
I guess I saw it as sadder than cynical, just because, like I said, this is an unstoppable force.
But it's done in such a goofy way. He's trapped. He's trapped by salt or garlic or something that keeps him in the corner, and then they don't realize he's a vampire. So the maid. He tells the maid to clean it up, and then he steps out of it I got you.
I thought it was funny.
I'm going to kill everybody now. It just seems so, I don't know, a weird wink. The dramatic irony there doesn't pay off. It's we knew you were going to become a vampire an hour ago, and I know they don't know that, and that usually is a device that really works well in film, and you can use that really effectively. That's why it's... dramatic irony is a thing, and we know what that is. But it just doesn't work here really well, because maybe we just know the rules of vampires too well, or whatever. But yeah, it's just goofy. The way he steps out of the circle, I gotcha. In the film, it's almost literally like the ending of the Thriller music video.
I had the chance to see this in theaters during I'm going to keep mentioning this forever, the IU trip. They played a number of films. This is one they had on film. It was a lot of fun because it was a midnight screening, and you can see the audience be very creeped out, and then they kind of enjoy the humor. You really got to see an audience enjoy how just bloody strange this movie is.
Yeah.
And Herzog's humor is not one that you can easily nail down. Bad Lieutenant Protocol New Orleans has a hallucinatory iguana in it that keeps freaking out Nick Cage.
We've all been there.
We've all been there. It has the immortal line in that movie, shoot him again, his soul's still dancing. Cut to his soul breakdancing. Herzog's just a weird dude.
And I guess... and I'm fine with, that sort of deconstruction of horror you know, like okay, we're gonna do, you know, like Shaun of the Dead or something.
Sure,
like, sure. Okay, so you have like a vampire film, and we're gonna make him kind of goofy.
Those are more consistent for you.
Exactly. Yes. Like that's fine, but yeah, this just seemed uneven because the idea of this guy loading a ship with plague rats and sending them to this town is horrifying. But it's really not in the movie. It's kind of...
So there is a major element of humor in the first half. We haven't mentioned him yet, so I'm very worried about your thoughts on him. The only guy to out Peter Lorre. Yeah.
Well, first of all, he looks exactly like Peter Lorre.
Yeah.
Which would be the second person we've seen. Moving on, inside joke. That doesn't work on podcasts.
Nope.
But he... Well, yeah, what was going on there? like this guy is in this film. He's the guy that sent Jonathan. He's the smartest guy in the movie. He
teamed up with Dracula early on.
Yeah, somehow he got in cahoots with Dracula. I don't know how that happened. He's not a vampire. He just really is like into him. He's like
he knows where the
runs
wind's
the fair
going.
club.
Yeah,
exactly. So he sends Jonathan on this quest, and he gets into jail, and they jail him because he's crazy. He's like laughing literally the whole film. The actor actually does a really good job.
To me, I like his performance so much.
You cannot call it over the top because
the top is far away from that.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, I was going to say because he commits to it so much that
right.
Yeah.
What I liked so much about him was, and this is definitely a Herzog choice.
He's worth watching the movie for.
Yeah. He played him like a rat.
Yeah.
And quite literally, this is a human rat who is as skittish and as conniving as I guess Aesop fables are.
Dracula couldn't have done this plan without
him.
He's the one that basically let the monster out of the cage.
Yeah. And is so giddy about it.
Yeah, he's having a ball.
So he's early on in the movie, and I just love watching this guy. I laugh with him. He's just a weirdo.
Yeah, I thought about him several times and just didn't think of a way to sort of bring him up. He's probably my favorite character. He's just so... literally, like, I'm sure somewhere on YouTube they've compiled all of his scenes together. So if you've never watched the film, it's worth sort of seeing him that way. But, like, there's probably a million people out there that can do a perfect impersonation of him. But, yeah, just...
I can't even try. I can't get my voice high enough.
Yeah, well, I don't want to try because I'm embarrassed. But,
yeah.
Because it's like that type of performance. It's just, like, an embarrassing thing.
Yeah.
But it's so consistent that it works.
It does.
Yeah, I mean,
and to me, that kind of helps set up the world early on. To me, it's a strange movie with some really creepy scenes.
So did it bother you at all how stupid Jonathan was?
No, I've never liked Jonathan as a character. Even reading Bram Stoker's Dracula,
Yeah, okay.
that Jonathan, to me, this is way more fun than to have him be pompous and boring.
Yeah, okay.
To have him just be the worst was really satisfying, and it just makes it better because, like, in every incarnation of Dracula, Jonathan takes way too long to catch on that the guy whose house is staying at it might not be a good guy. To have him so blatantly not get it made it really entertaining for me.
Yeah. And the way the character plays is just so, like, flippant. Like, it's just like... Well, I know he's weird looking, but I gotta sell him this house, man.
He's like a side character in a Monty Python sketch. It's like, oh, let's see where this goes.
Yeah, it's just like really weird. And then he has this like sort of epic escape where he ties bed sheets together to get out of the castle, and he falls, and he's like knocked out for a while.
Yeah,
like this is our hero.
Like, I know. It's why when they truly give the hero marker to his wife, it's so earned because
because she's not a total
Yeah.
boob. This guy's just really dumb.
Yeah.
You know, what's up with the kid playing the violin at Dracula's castle, though?
Creepy.
He's just weird.
Yeah.
It's just Herzog being weird.
Yeah.
He's not even playing it well.
Yeah.
I don't know. You know, it's like funny. I guess, yeah, no, I'm like laughing about it a lot. I mean, I'm glad to rewatch the film. It's just to me I do think it's a good movie. Like I think it's a really good movie, but it's insane the regard this movie is kind of held with. Like I just don't.
It is up
that's
there
kind of
on
nuts.
his films. Maybe because also it is one of his more accessible films.
Yeah, that's probably true.
That's part of it, and it is a really interesting Dracula movie.
Yeah, it is. Definitely.
But we're gonna see something very different than this next week. For next week, we're gonna be reviewing Fitzcarraldo. His, some say masterpiece, some say we already covered his masterpiece. We'll find out what we're going to say next week.
We'll find out what we're going to say.
Yeah, because we haven't recorded that one yet.
Yeah, exactly.
And until then, you can leave us a comment at theartimmortal.com and let us know what you think about this version of Nosferatu or any of the films we've covered. While you're there, you can also check out my other podcast, The Immortals, which just yesterday had its 50th episode. And this was our 1-year anniversary. And we covered the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And something else happened in that episode, so take a listen. And where else can we find you?
Constant Diversions, my YouTube channel. I review video games on there. Check me out.
Awesome. You can also find us at the Immortals Pod on Twitter and Let's Take 5 at gmail.com if you're too shy to leave a comment on the site.
This is going to be... What if someone was too shy to leave comments on the internet? What if that actually exists?
That would be the smartest person on earth.
I know. Wouldn't the world be great?
They could run for president. Do better in the polls.
We were both building towards that, inevitably.
It's what we had to do. Mm-hmm. All right. My name's Austin Luger.
My name's Eric Martindale.
Catch you next time, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Listen. The children of the night make their music.